The massive Imperial survey ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Its sensors picked up the usual readings: a medium-sized yellow star, several gas giants, and a handful of rocky planets. Captain Darius of the Imperial Scout Force would have ignored it entirely if not for the strange signals coming from the third planet. "Another primitive civilization," he muttered, expecting to find the usual signs of early space development. But as his ship's computers processed the data, his four eyes widened in surprise. The planet's orbit was filled with satellites, space stations, and ships that didn't match any known design in the Imperial database. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Marcus Reed of the Earth Defense Fleet was having a quiet day. He sat in his command chair aboard the EDF Vigilant, watching Jupiter's swirling clouds through the bridge viewport. The gas giant's magnetic field helped hide Earth's defense fleet from long-range scans, a trick humanity had perfected over years of preparing for possible alien contact. The alert came without warning. "Captain, unknown ships detected near Pluto's orbit," reported Lisa, his sensor officer. "3 vessels. Configuration doesn't match anything in our database." Reed straightened in his chair. Humanity had wondered about alien life for centuries. Now, it seemed, they had their answer. "Show me," he ordered, and a hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. The alien ships were sleek, almost beautiful, with curved lines that suggested advanced engineering. "They're broadcasting something," Communications Officer Mike Thompson announced. "Universal Translator is working on it. It's a message in multiple mathematical sequences, basic stuff, prime numbers, geometric ratios." Reed nodded. "They're testing to see if we're intelligent. Send back the next 3 numbers in their sequence, but add an error in the last digit. Let's not show our full hand yet." The Imperial ships received Earth's response. Captain Darius smiled, his scaled skin reflecting the blue light of his command console. "Primitive, but they can understand basic mathematics. Begin the standard contact protocol." But Reed had other plans. As the Imperial ships moved closer to Jupiter, the Earth fleet remained hidden in the magnetic field, watching and waiting. Reed had studied possible first contact scenarios for years, and something about these ships bothered him. Their formation was too perfect, too military. "Sir," Lisa called out, "I'm detecting energy buildups in their forward sections." "Weapons?" "Probably," Reed replied calmly. "They're following a textbook approach. Show strength first, then demand submission." "Too bad we don't follow their textbook." He opened a channel to the rest of his hidden fleet. "All ships, prepare for Operation Thunderbolt. Remember your training. These guys might have better technology, but we've got surprise and Jupiter on our side." The Imperial ships moved closer, their sensors confused by Jupiter's magnetic field. Captain Darius frowned at the readings. "This is unusual. Their satellites suggest Grade 3 technology, but we're getting odd interference patterns." Suddenly, alarms blared across his bridge. From behind Jupiter's largest moons, Earth ships appeared, using the gravity wells to accelerate at speeds that shocked the Imperial crew. They weren't the most advanced ships in the galaxy, but they moved with a precision that spoke of extensive training. "Impossible," Darius shouted as the first volley of Earth missiles streaked toward his ships. The missiles weren't particularly powerful, but they carried electromagnetic warheads designed to confuse Imperial shields. Earth's scientists had guessed that any advanced civilization would use electromagnetic shielding, and they had guessed right. Reed watched as his fleet executed their plan perfectly. While the Imperial ships were still reacting to the missile attack, smaller Earth vessels swooped in from different angles, using Jupiter's gravity to perform maneuvers that the Imperial ships' computers couldn't predict fast enough. "Their technology is about 200 years ahead of ours," Reed observed, watching the battle unfold. "But they're fighting like it's 1,000 years ahead. That's going to cost them." The Imperial ships tried to form a defensive triangle, a formation that had worked for centuries against other civilizations. But Earth's ships didn't play by those rules. They'd broke into smaller groups, some acting as decoys while others struck from unexpected vectors. "Sir," Darius's second-in-command shouted, "their weapons aren't powerful enough to penetrate our shields directly, but the electromagnetic pulses are creating feedback loops in our defense grid." Darius couldn't believe what he was seeing. These primitives weren't just fighting. They were winning. They had turned their technological disadvantage into an advantage, using simpler, more flexible systems that could adapt quickly to new situations. On the Vigilant, Reed allowed himself a small smile as the Imperial ships began to retreat. "Don't pursue," he ordered his fleet. "Let them go. We've made our point." The Imperial ships limped back to hyperspace, their pristine hulls now scared by battle. It was the first defeat Imperial forces had suffered in over 300 years, and it had come at the hands of a species they had dismissed as primitive just hours earlier. As Darius prepared his report for Imperial Command, he struggled to find words to explain how this had happened. How could a species with inferior technology defeat Imperial warships? The Empire ruled 10,000 systems, had technology that could move planets, and had never failed to subdue a civilization at first contact. Back on the Vigilant, Reed was recording his own report. "First contact achieved with alien civilization," he dictated. "Hostile intent confirmed by weapons charging. Enemy vessels displayed superior technology, but rigid tactics. Our preparation and adaptability proved decisive. Recommend immediate upgrade of all defense systems and continued development of unconventional warfare strategies." Lisa approached with a datapad. "Sir, analysis of their retreat vector suggests they came from the direction of the Orion Arm. Should we begin preparing for a larger force?" Reed looked at the star map, his expression serious. "They'll be back. An empire that size doesn't take humiliation lightly. But next time, we'll be ready." He turned to his crew, seeing determination in their eyes. "Today we proved something important. Humanity can hold its own among the stars. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we've learned to use what we have in ways they never imagined." As news of the battle spread across Earth, humanity began to prepare. They had won their first encounter with an alien empire not through overwhelming force, but through creativity, preparation, and the willingness to think differently. The Empire had ruled the galaxy because no one had ever challenged their assumptions. That was about to change. In his quarters that night, Reed looked out at Jupiter's swirling storms and thought about the battle. The Empire had expected Earth to be like every other world they'd encountered, awed by their technology, cowed by their power. Instead, they'd found a species that had spent centuries imagining this very moment, a species that had learned to turn disadvantages into advantages. The communication system chimed. "Captain," Thompson's voice came through. "We're picking up increased activity in the outer system. Long-range sensors suggest more ships might be coming." "Good," Reed replied, his voice steady. "Send word to Earth. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy that humanity is ready for whatever comes next." He smiled as Jupiter's red spot came into view. The Empire had ruled the galaxy because no one had ever stood up to them. But they had never met humans before, and that was going to make all the difference. Imperial scholar Lin stood before the massive windows of the research vessel, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. After the shocking defeat of Captain Darius's ships, the Empire had sent her team to study this puzzling species before any further military action was taken. Their ship maintained a careful distance, using advanced cloaking technology to avoid detection. "Fascinating," she muttered, making notes on her datapad. "They're fighting among themselves even now, yet they united perfectly against our ships." Her assistant, Tom, had taken a human name to better immerse himself in their study, brought her another stack of historical data they'd collected from Earth's easily accessible information networks. The humans were surprisingly open with their information. Their global computer network contained detailed records of their entire history, wars, disasters, achievements, and failures. While most species tried to hide their weaknesses, humans seemed to document them proudly, turning them into learning experiences. "Look at this," Lynn called Tom over. When most species discovered nuclear power, they either managed it perfectly or destroyed themselves. But humans, they used it as a weapon first, saw the horror they'd created, and then turned it into a power source. They learned and adapted. Tom scrolled through his own data. Their evolution is unusual too. Most intelligent species evolved in stable environments, developing specific adaptations. Humans evolved in a constantly changing environment, forcing them to become adaptable generalists rather than specialists. Their research ship's cameras zoomed in on various Earth locations, watching humans go about their daily lives. In one city, they were rebuilding after a natural disaster. In another, they were testing new technologies. Everywhere, they were doing things differently from each other, yet somehow making it work. The Empire succeeds through uniformity. Lynn explained to her team during their daily briefing. We find what works best and make everyone do it that way. But humans, they try everything. Most of their attempts fail, but they keep the solutions that work and learn from the ones that don't. Their research continued for weeks. Lynn's team watched in fascination as humans handled crises, celebrated victories, and kept pushing forward. They studied Earth's entertainment, discovering that humans had imagined meeting aliens thousands of times in their stories. They'd even accurately predicted some of the Empire's tactics. They've been preparing for us without even knowing we exist, Tom realized. Every story, every movie, every game about aliens, it was all preparation. They'd been thinking about how to handle advanced civilizations for generations. Lynn was about to respond when an alert flashed on her screen. The Imperial Council was demanding her preliminary report. She knew they wouldn't like what she had to say, but her duty was to the truth. In the Imperial Council chamber, Lynn stood before the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. Her hologram flickered slightly as she began her presentation. Honorable Council, my research suggests that humanity poses a unique challenge to our traditional approaches. The council members shifted uncomfortably as she continued. Their greatest strength isn't their technology or their military capability. It's their adaptability. While we perfect a single approach, they try thousands. While we maintain stability, they embrace chaos and learn from it. Admiral Vale, still angry about the defeat at Jupiter, interrupted. Are you suggesting we should fear these primitives? They're centuries behind us technologically. Lynn pulled up an image of Earth's history. That's exactly why we should be cautious. Look at their technological progress. Other species advance in a straight line, but humans, their progress is exponential. They went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years, from their first computers to global networking in even less time. The council members murmured among themselves. This was not the report they had expected. They had thought Lynn would find weaknesses to exploit, not strengths to fear. There's more, Lynn continued. They're perfect improvisers. When they lack technology, they find clever ways around problems. They turned Jupiter's magnetic field into a military advantage. They used their technological weakness against our ships, knowing simpler systems would be less affected by electromagnetic warfare. The council's leader leaned forward. What do you recommend? Lynn took a deep breath. Peaceful contact. Offer them membership in the Empire as equals, not subjects. Their adaptability and innovation could benefit us all. The chamber erupted in protests. The Empire had never accepted a new species as equals. Their entire system was based on the principle that older, more advanced civilizations should rule over younger ones. Admiral Vale stood up. This is absurd. We cannot change thousands of years of successful policy because one primitive species got lucky in one battle. I say we send in the main fleet and end this now. Lynn tried one last time. Please, consider the evidence. These humans, they're different. They've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near nuclear annihilation. Each time, they came back stronger. They don't think like us. They don't act like us. Our usual tactics won't work. But the council had made up their mind. They thanked Lynn for her report and dismissed her. As her hologram faded, she heard them beginning to plan the invasion. Back on her research ship, Lynn watched Earth with growing concern. She had seen enough of human history to know how this would go. The Empire would come with overwhelming force, expecting an easy victory. They would follow their standard invasion protocols, the same ones that had worked on 1,000 other worlds. They're going to try to break them, she told Tom. But humans don't break. They bend, they adapt, they surprise you. The Council is about to learn that the hard way. Tom looked worried. Should we warn them? Lynn shook her head. The Council has to learn this lesson themselves. But make sure all our research is properly archived. Someday, someone will want to know why the Empire's perfect record of conquest finally failed. As their ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Lynn made one final log entry. The Empire has ruled the galaxy through superior technology and unwavering protocols. But they've never faced a species that thrives on adversity, that grows stronger when challenged. They've never faced humans before. And that might change everything. The research vessel slipped away into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. On the surface, humans continued their preparations, unaware that they had just been studied but somehow knowing that a greater challenge was coming. In shipyards around the solar system, they were already adapting the lessons learned from the first battle. In laboratories and universities, they were analyzing every scrap of data from the Imperial ships. The Empire was coming, bringing with it the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. They expected to find a primitive species cowering before their might. Instead, they would find humanity doing what it did best, preparing, adapting, and getting ready to surprise them all over again. The Imperial fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 5,000 ships, each one larger and more powerful than the vessels humanity had defeated months earlier. Their arrival blocked out entire star fields, creating an artificial constellation of power and menace. Commander James Stone stood in Earth's primary defense command center, deep under the Rocky Mountains. The massive wall screens showed the Imperial fleet's approach. Unlike many others around her, she smiled slightly at the sight. They're using the same formation they've probably used for the last 1,000 years, she said to her staff. Perfect spacing, optimal coverage. And that's exactly why we're going to beat them. The Empire's demands came through every communication channel on Earth. Their message was simple: surrender or be destroyed. They gave humanity 12 hours to decide, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Send them our answer, Stone ordered. The message was equally simple: a detailed analysis of the Imperial fleet's fuel consumption rates, suggesting they hadn't brought enough supplies for a long campaign. It wasn't a threat or a boast, just a fact that showed humans had been watching and learning. Admiral Vale, commanding the Imperial fleet from his massive flagship, received the message with rage. They dare to lecture us about logistics, launch the first wave, show them what real power looks like. But humanity had been preparing. As the first 1,000 Imperial ships entered the inner solar system, they found it changed. The asteroid belt had been turned into a maze of sensor jammers and automated defense platforms. Comets had been moved into new orbits, creating gravitational disturbances that forced the Imperial ships to waste fuel compensating. Clever tricks, Vale sneered. But they can't change physics. Our ships are too powerful, too advanced. Begin the standard attack pattern. Stone watched the Imperial ships spread out into their attack formation. Right on schedule, she said. Begin Operation Hornet's Nest. Across the solar system, humanity's defense plans sprang into action. But it wasn't what the Empire expected. Instead of meeting the Imperial fleet in open battle, Earth's ships scattered. Small, fast vessels darted out from hidden bases on moons and asteroids, striking at Imperial supply lines before disappearing again. What is this? Vale demanded as reports of attacks came in from all directions. Where is their main fleet? Where are their capital ships? The answer became clear over the next few hours. There was no main fleet, Every human ship was operating independently or in small groups, following a strategy as old as warfare itself: death by 1,000 cuts. Stone's next order surprised even her own staff. Transmit the plans for our shield modulators to all ships. Let them see exactly how we're getting through their defenses. But Commander, one of her officers protested, won't that help them adapt? Yes, Stone smiled. And while they're adapting to that, we'll switch to something completely different. Keep them reacting, keep them guessing. The Empire's mighty fleet found itself in an impossible situation. Their advanced shields were calibrated to stop powerful energy weapons, but humans used simple kinetic weapons that slipped through. When the Imperial ships adjusted their shields, humans switched to electromagnetic pulses. When they adapted to that, humans had something else ready. This is impossible. Vale raged as another supply ship reported damage. They're not fighting properly. There's no order to their attacks, no pattern. That was exactly the point. Humans had studied military history, not just their own, but the histories of every guerrilla force that had ever fought against a superior enemy. They knew they couldn't win in a straight fight, so they didn't try. Stone's command center tracked the Imperial fleet's fuel reserves dropping faster than expected. The Empire's ships were designed for quick, overwhelming victories. Their massive energy weapons and powerful shields consumed enormous amounts of power. But humans were forcing them to stay active, to keep their shields up, to burn fuel chasing shadows. We're not trying to destroy them, Stone explained to Earth's leaders in a brief update. We're making them destroy themselves. The Empire had never faced this kind of warfare. Their tactical computers couldn't predict attacks that followed no pattern. Their ships couldn't catch enemies that never stayed to fight. Their supply lines were under constant harassment from raiders that seemed to appear from nowhere. Fall back to Saturn. Vale finally ordered after 6 days of frustration. We'll regroup and... His words were cut off by new alarms. While the Imperial fleet had been chasing human ships around the inner system, engineers had been busy in the outer system. Saturn's rings were now filled with millions of tiny automated weapons platforms, almost impossible to detect until they activated. Now they're using rocks as weapons, Vale said in disbelief as clouds of high-speed projectiles erupted from the rings, overwhelming Imperial point defenses through sheer numbers. Stone watched the Imperial fleet scatter for the first time in the Empire's history. Send the next message, she ordered. The transmission reached Vale's flagship as it maneuvered through the debris field that had once been part of his front line. The message was a simple offer: withdraw now, and humans would share their techniques for improving Imperial shield efficiency by 30%. They're offering us technology. Vale's second-in-command asked in confusion. After all this? No, Vale replied, finally understanding. They're showing us they can help us as easily as hurt us, that they're worth more as allies than subjects. The mighty Imperial fleet, which had arrived expecting an easy victory, limped away from the solar system 9 days after it arrived. They had lost over 300 ships, not to superior firepower, but to an endless series of small attacks that bled them dry. In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, Stone looked at the casualty reports. Human losses had been minimal, mostly from accidents and miscalculations rather than enemy action. They had won by refusing to fight the way the Empire expected, by turning their whole solar system into a weapon. They'll be back, one of her officers said. Yes, Stone agreed, but not the same way. They'll have to change to adapt. And that's the real victory. We've forced the Empire to learn something new for the first time in centuries. As the last Imperial ships vanished into hyperspace, humanity began to clean up and rebuild. They had proven something important, that determination and adaptability could overcome raw power, that creativity could defeat rigid strength. Stone looked at the wall screens, now showing repair crews at work around Saturn's rings. Send a message to all commands, she ordered. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. Now we prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2? Someone asked. Yes, Stone smiled. Now we show the galaxy that humanity isn't just good at defending ourselves. We're good at making friends too. The Empire isn't the only civilization out there, and I bet we're not the only ones who are tired of their rules. The Empire had ruled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force, but they had just learned that force wasn't enough against an enemy who refused to play by their rules. Humanity had changed the game, and the galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador James Walker stepped onto the trading station orbiting Proxima b, the first human to openly visit a non-Earth colony. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly off, and the air had a sweet smell he couldn't quite place. But what really caught his attention were the aliens watching him from every corner. "They're afraid," his assistant whispered. "Not of us. They're afraid of being seen with us." Walker nodded. After humanity's successful defense against the Empire, Earth had sent out diplomatic teams to contact other species. Most were too scared to respond, but a few brave traders had agreed to meet here, far from Imperial observation posts. "We're not here to cause trouble," Walker announced to the gathered aliens. "We're here to offer hope." The station's main meeting hall was filled with representatives from 12 different species. Some looked almost human, others were completely alien, but they all shared one thing: they lived under Imperial rule. A tall, blue-skinned trader named Rix spoke first. "We watched the battle in your system. The Empire, they never lost before. Never had to retreat. How did you do it?" Walker activated a hologram showing Earth's defense strategy. "We didn't try to match their strength. We used their size against them, their rigid thinking against them. But more importantly, we showed that they can be beaten." The room buzzed with quiet conversation. On dozens of worlds, aliens had watched in secret as humanity forced the Empire to withdraw. For the first time in living memory, someone had stood up to the masters of the galaxy and won. "The Empire will crush you eventually," another trader warned. "They'll send bigger fleets, better weapons." "Maybe," Walker agreed. "But what if we work together? What if we shared our different ways of thinking, our different technologies? The Empire is strong because they force everyone to do things their way. But diversity, having many different ways to solve problems, that's what makes life itself successful." He showed them the hybrid weapons Earth had created by combining human innovation with captured Imperial technology. Shields that used less power but worked better. Engines that were simpler but more reliable. The aliens leaned forward, their fear forgotten as they saw new possibilities. "We can help each other," Walker continued. "Earth can show you how to resist. You can show us shortcuts in developing new technology. Together, we can show the galaxy a better way." Over the next few hours, Walker laid out Earth's proposal: a network of resistance cells, each operating independently but supporting each other. Trading stations like this one would become secret meeting places where ideas and technologies could be exchanged. Back on Earth, engineers were already working with the first pieces of alien technology brought by brave traders. In a secret facility under the Australian outback, Dr. Emma Roberts examined a damaged Imperial engine core. "Look at this," she told her team. "They built it to be perfect, to last forever. But that makes it almost impossible to repair in the field." She pointed to human engines nearby. "Ours are less efficient, but we can fix them with basic tools. Now, imagine if we combine these approaches." The result was a new type of engine that combined Imperial power with human practicality. When the plans were shared through Walker's growing network, other species began adding their own improvements. The Empire noticed something was wrong when their ships started experiencing unusual equipment failures. Devices that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly behaved strangely. They didn't realize that resistance engineers had found ways to reprogram Imperial technology using methods that Imperial security systems didn't recognize as threats. On an Imperial factory world, robotic assembly lines began producing components with tiny flaws that only showed up under combat conditions. On another planet, Communication relays developed mysterious delays that made coordinating large fleets more difficult. The Empire sent investigators, but they couldn't find any obvious sabotage. They were looking for direct attacks, not the subtle changes that came from 1,000 small resistances working together. Walker traveled from world to world, always staying ahead of Imperial agents. Each place he visited joined the growing network. Species that had never dared to resist before learned from Earth's example, adapting human strategies to their own situations. Humans have a saying, he told a group of resistance leaders. A rope made from many small threads is stronger than a single thick cable. The Empire is that cable, powerful but inflexible. We're becoming the rope, each of us adding our own strength in our own way. The Empire's responses became increasingly desperate. They'd banned trade with certain systems, not realizing that the banned trades had never been the real point of contact. They increased patrols along major space lanes, while resistance ships used routes that Imperial navigators had dismissed as useless. In her Australian lab, Roberts received a steady stream of new technologies from Earth's allies. Each piece was studied, improved, and shared back through the network. Humans learned to build better ships, while their allies learned to think in new ways. The Empire spent thousands of years making everyone think the same way. Roberts explained to visiting alien engineers, but the real strength of the galaxy is in its diversity. Different species, different approaches, different solutions to the same problems. The resistance network grew slowly but steadily. Every Imperial victory pushed more worlds to secretly support it. Every show of force made the Empire look more like bullies and less like the civilization's natural leaders. Walker met with his fellow ambassadors on a rogue planet drifting between stars, where Imperial patrols never looked. The conference room was filled with representatives from 50 different species now. Phase 2 is almost complete, he told them. The Empire still rules the galaxy, but their grip is weakening. They just don't know it yet. A small furry alien raised its hand. What is Phase 3? Walker smiled. We don't know yet, and that's our greatest strength. The Empire plans everything centuries in advance. We adapt, we change, we let our plans grow naturally. When the time comes, we'll know what to do. As he spoke, a message arrived from Earth. The Empire was gathering its forces for another attack on the solar system. But this time would be different. This time, humanity wasn't alone. Let them come, Walker told the gathered representatives. This time, we'll show them that the galaxy is changing. The age of empire is ending. The age of cooperation is beginning. The representatives cheered, their various voices creating a strange but harmonious sound. The Empire had spent millennia teaching the galaxy that strength came from uniformity and control. Humanity had shown them a different way. That true strength came from diversity and freedom. As Walker prepared to return to Earth, he looked at the assembled aliens. Former enemies were working together. Species that had never spoken to each other were sharing ideas. The Empire's greatest achievement had been creating peace through power. But now, something new was growing in the galaxy. Peace through partnership. The Empire still ruled the galaxy, but their power was built on a foundation that was quietly crumbling away. Soon, they would learn that controlling the galaxy was not the same as leading it. And humanity, the upstart species they had dismissed as primitive, was showing the way to a very different future. The Emperor stood at the window of his palace, watching ships move through the artificial rings that surrounded the Imperial capital world. For 10,000 years, those rings had been a symbol of perfect order. Now, for the first time, they felt like chains holding the Empire back. Reports kept arriving from across the galaxy. Imperial ships were breaking down at unprecedented rates. Colonies were producing less than their quotas. And everywhere, there were whispers about Earth and its growing network of allies. How did we lose control? He asked his advisors. None had an answer. The Empire had faced rebellions before, but this was different. There was no enemy fleet to fight, no rebel base to destroy. Instead, their perfect system was coming apart piece by piece. On Earth, Commander Stone and Ambassador Walker met in the same Rocky Mountain Command Center, where humanity had coordinated its defense years ago. But now the screen showed something very different. A map of Imperial supply lines with thousands of red dots showing where they were vulnerable. The Empire's biggest weakness was always their size, Stone explained to the gathered human and alien leaders. They need huge amounts of resources just to maintain their current systems. Take away those resources, and their strength becomes their weakness. The Resistance didn't attack Imperial ships anymore. Instead, they simply made it harder for those ships to get fuel. They didn't fight Imperial armies. They just made sure those armies couldn't get their supplies on time. Each world in the Resistance network found its own way to add to the pressure. Your Majesty, the Imperial Economic Advisor's hologram flickered as he delivered more bad news. 3 more sectors have reported critical supply shortages. We've lost contact with the mining colonies in the Carina Arm, and our attempts to increase production are being blocked by equipment failures. The Emperor knew what that meant. The rebels weren't just fighting. They were changing how everything worked. Imperial technology, once the most reliable in the galaxy, was becoming unpredictable. Not broken, just slightly wrong in ways their rigid systems couldn't handle. Dr. Roberts, now leading Earth's technological collaboration program, reviewed the latest reports with satisfaction. The Empire's perfectly organized supply chain was falling apart. Their unbeatable warships were stuck in dock waiting for parts. Their unstoppable armies were scattered across too many worlds trying to maintain order. We didn't have to destroy their technology, she explained to a group of alien engineers. We just had to help it evolve in ways they couldn't control. They spent so long making everything perfect that they forgot how to handle imperfection. The Emperor called an emergency meeting of the Imperial Council. The same council that had dismissed Scholar Lin's warnings years ago now faced the consequences of their rigid thinking. Perhaps, the Emperor said slowly, it is time to consider a different approach. The council chamber erupted in protests, but the Emperor raised his hand for silence. We built this empire to bring order to the galaxy. But order without growth leads to stagnation. These humans, and their allies, they've shown us a different way. On Earth, Walker received the Imperial message with a mix of surprise and hope. The Empire was offering to negotiate, not with Earth alone, but with the entire Resistance network. The meeting was set for neutral ground, a space station orbiting a dying star. The Emperor himself would attend, breaking thousands of years of tradition. Earth sent Walker, Stone, and Roberts as their representatives. Other Resistance worlds sent their own leaders. The Emperor looked smaller in person than in his official images. He walked into the meeting room without his usual ceremonial guards, accompanied only by Scholar Lin, who had predicted all of this years ago. Your networks of cooperation are stronger than our chains of command, the Emperor admitted to the gathered representatives. You've proven that diversity can be more powerful than uniformity. So I ask you, teach us. Help us change before our own rigidity destroys us. Walker stepped forward. The Empire's strength doesn't have to be its weakness. Your organization, your technology, your experience, these are valuable. They just need to be flexible. Over the next several days, the two sides worked out a new vision for the galaxy. The Empire would not be destroyed but transformed. Imperial worlds would be free to develop their own ways of doing things while maintaining the connections that made galactic civilization possible. It's not surrender, Lin explained to the Emperor. It's evolution. The Empire will become what it should have been all along, not a force that controls the galaxy, but one that helps it grow. The final agreement created something new, the Galactic Confederation. The Empire's military power would be turned to defending member worlds rather than controlling them. Their advanced technology would be shared rather than imposed. Each species would be free to develop in its own way while contributing to the greater whole. Humanity's greatest contribution wasn't defeating us, the Emperor said at the signing ceremony. It was showing us that real strength comes from embracing change rather than resisting it. Stone watched from the back of the room as leaders from hundreds of worlds signed the agreement. "It's strange," she said to Walker. "We won without fighting a final battle. We changed the galaxy without destroying anything." "That's because this wasn't about destroying the Empire," Walker replied. "It was about helping it grow up. They spent 10,000 years being the galaxy's stern parent. Now it's time for them to be a partner instead." Roberts was already working with Imperial engineers, showing them how to make their technology more adaptable. "Think of it like this," she told them. "You spent all this time building perfect machines. Now we'll teach you how to build machines that can become perfect in different ways for different needs." The Emperor's final act under the old system was to issue a galaxy-wide broadcast. "The Empire as you knew it is ended," he announced. "But what replaces it will be stronger, not because it imposes order, but because it grows from the combined strength of all peoples." Years later, scholar Lynn updated her original report on humanity. "Their greatest achievement wasn't military or technological," she wrote. "It was showing us that strength doesn't come from eliminating differences, but from embracing them. They taught the galaxy that true power comes not from control, but from cooperation." The empire that had ruled the galaxy through force and fear was gone. In its place was something new, a civilization that drew its strength from the very diversity it had once tried to suppress. And it had all started because one species refused to follow the rules, refused to be conquered, and showed the galaxy a better way. In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, now serving as Earth's link to the Galactic Confederation, Stone looked at the stars showing on the main screen. They didn't look like distant points of light anymore. They looked like bridges connecting countless worlds, countless peoples, all working together in their own unique ways. "Ready to see what happens next?" Walker asked her. Stone smiled. "With the galaxy changing this fast, I can't wait to find out." The Empire had ruled the galaxy until they crossed humanity's path. But in the end, humanity hadn't destroyed them. They had helped them become something better. It wasn't the end of civilization. It was just the beginning of a new and better one.